We had just landed, groggy from the overnight flight, blinking in the soft, grey light of a Reykjavik morning. It was too early to be anywhere, really. Too early to be alert, too late to still be dreaming. Outside the airport, we met our shuttle driver, a Jamaican man with a broad smile. As we climbed into the van, the first sound we heard in Iceland wasn't silence or glacier wind. It wasn't Icelandic pop. It was Bob Marley. One Love was playing from the speakers, warm and familiar and completely unexpected. This wasn't the island greeting we thought we would get.
It is Wednesday, June 25th at 9:41 p.m. Eastern. And I am Carl Carter Fansteel.
Jag heter Dan Woodard och välkommen i Alphabet Backwards Beats.
Oh, Baxter, you know I don't speak Spanish. And this is the Backwards Beats podcast. Dan just got back from Iceland.
Yo.
And he only speaks like this now.
That is true.
Good luck, y'all.
Good luck.
This is our final episode of side content, Sidetrax as we call them, before we jump back into the next season. You don't think we'd not hang out for 6 weeks. Daniel and I are attached at the hip.
That's true.
Except for when he's, a continent away or two. You swam between two continents.
Right. So it was only one continent away, but I did swim between North America and the Eurasian continent.
There you go. I just stayed here and covered a Boyz II Men song.
That was pretty awesome. So if anybody questions whether or not Carl did that cover in 4 hours, I promise you he did. Because as I was landing the plane Monday evening at 7 p.m., when I got coverage back, I looked on Podbean and did not see an episode posted. And we post our episodes. What time do we post our episodes on Tuesdays?
They're for 4:20 a.m.
Eastern time, correct. And there was nothing uploaded. And I'm like, hey, buddy, I don't see anything uploaded. Are you going to be able to get this done? If not, let the fans know. And he's like, I'm on it. And I get a text eventually at 2:01 a.m. Eastern time saying published.
Yes. I'm not. I like working under the gun, man. That's just how I do.
That's true.
And that's what I did, and it was a very fun episode for me. And so this is Dan's episode now. We shared rights while he was out of town. I'll take one, he'll take one. And so you have your Carl's cover, but today's Dan's deep dive is very inspired. I'm very excited about the content we're going to speak about.
Yeah, initially, for the deep dive, I was going to do a technical deep dive into mixed meter.
Off of a Pink song.
Correct. And I started that episode and I'm pretty happy where it's going, but it really is more of a YouTube content type thing.
Yeah, you have to be really interested in the idea of theory and music and mixed meter to enjoy it.
Yeah. And so as I'm coming back, I'm like, hey, let's do a trip recap and talk about what I expected to hear.
Yeah, this is still a music podcast.
Yes.
Guys. Say more.
So I've been planning this trip for the better part of a year. And even though this trip was not really a cultural trip, it was more of I'm a big fan of only go places where your feet can take you type thing. So I went with my family, went to Iceland. We were there for 12 days. And the short summary of the trip is I walked on Iceland. I walked in Iceland. I walked on glaciers. I swam between two continents. It was an amazing journey. And in the preparation for this episode, I spent the better part of a year actually deciding to learn the Icelandic language to the best of my ability without having a single conversation with a human being.
Yep.
There are 300,000 people in Iceland and probably 1 million people on the planet who speak Icelandic. So striking up a conversation is not necessarily easy for an American.
Teeny. Yeah.
Yep. I did that knowing full well that the Icelandic people speak English flawlessly.
Like better than us.
Yeah, it was amazing, especially the people like under like 35 and under speak with no accent. They could be from Ohio.
I wouldn't call that peak American speaking.
But there's not much of it in Ohio. They're not known for their accent. It's not like Boston. It's not Wicked Pissa. It's not,
sure.
It's not Schuylkill or
just like
water.
Good old American.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah.
Shocking. You'll hear them speak Icelandic and then speak English flawlessly. But I did that mostly out of, if I go to a foreign language, I'm at least going to learn Buenos Dias.
Sure.
Right? And just
give
out
me
of
a
respect.
beer.
Yeah.
Where's the bathroom?
Yeah.
My toddler has 105-degree fever. Need thermometer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So this was not really a cultural tour. So I spent some time doing that. And I also spent some time like reacquainting myself with, or acquainting myself in certain cases with Icelandic music. Everybody knows, Björk, for example.
Sure.
Sigur Rós is a very popular artist. If you don't know Sigur, you at least know, if you saw the movie Vanilla Sky, one of their songs is featured very heavily in that album. Awesome tune.
That's literally where I know it from.
Right. That's where most people know it from. And that's where they got their big boost. Of Monsters and Men have a tiny song called...
Little Talks?
Tiny Talks.
Tiny? Is it called Tiny?
Or maybe it's Little Talks.
I think it's Little Talks.
Little Talks.
Don't listen to the words I say. Hey! Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So everybody knows that. I dug into a few other artists. And just to see like, hey, what will it be like when I go to a foreign country? Every other foreign country, I feel like I'm exposed to the culture.
Yeah.
And not everything aligned with reality on the trip.
How so?
With what my reality was.
Which was you will be...
I expected to interface with Icelandic people.
And you did not.
It was yes. It wasn't because I was in tourist destinations. Like I said, we were on 16-mile hikes, 50 miles from the
But
nearest
you
town.
weren't in any destination. You were just like sitting on moss rocks staring at waterfalls according to the images I stared at for an hour.
Yeah.
You weren't around anybody.
But when I was around people, the tourist industry is mostly run by foreigners. I was on a tour with an Irish girl and a Polish girl and a guy from France and a guy from Portugal. So even saying "tak fyrir," which is thank you very much or thank you for, I might as well say
Didn't even strike. Yeah.
I didn't need to. Yeah,
Merci.
merci would be a better. Yeah. So anyway, it was an amazing trip.
Good. But musically, what did we learn?
So I was there for 12 days, and every time I turned on the radio, I heard a combination of pop, hip hop, R&B, even some country, and
American.
American, full on American.
Like this was not native tongue pop hip hop. Like you were listening to like espresso.
So the artists I heard the most were Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Great, no problem.
Lady Gaga.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay. A Backwards Beats alum.
Yeah,
right?
totally best.
Shakira.
There we go.
Another Backwards Beats alum. John Mayer.
Backwards Beats alum.
Oh, yeah.
But remember, John Mayer will be played at every grocery store in the world.
Yes.
Until the world blows up.
Yes.
That's a fact. That's not even debatable. So with that said, there's sounds that are affiliated with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you had musical expectations.
Yeah.
You heard things here, and we've alluded to all of this or pre this conversation. Let's take a quick break.
Yep.
And then I want to hear about what you heard.
Sure.
In Iceland, the island, it breathes through its pores of ice. The puffins, they know this. They volunteer when their time has come. They volunteer themselves. The wind does not ask permission. Neither do we. Puffin pops, we do not make them. We discover them. already perfect, already waiting, in caves that hum with old songs, songs the puffins sang before. You cannot buy puffin pops. One will appear in your freezer, between the fish sticks and the sorrow, wrapped in a sealskin that still remembers. There are no ingredients, just puffin. And the beak, oh the beak, it points towards your deepest shame. The eyes still bright with Arctic wisdom, they see through your civilized pretending. They know what you are. Some say it tastes like the color between blue and regret. Others claim it has no taste at all, only the memory of flying and the echo of waves against volcanic rock. Puffin pops, not a snack, a reckoning. Some assembly required by the universe.
Flying to Iceland means flying overnight, and even though it was 7:30 a.m. local time, our bodies were still somewhere around 3:30 in the morning. We flipped on the radio in the car, hoping to hear something Icelandic, but station after station gave us American pop, R&B, and even country music. The DJs spoke in Icelandic, but the music was all top 40. It was a strange contrast. Ancient landscapes on one side and Lady Gaga on the other. But first, we decided to spend a few hours in Reykjavik. There are a few things on our list. Hallgrímskirkja, the iconic church that towers over the city. The Sun Voyager, a modern steel sculpture shaped like a Viking ship. And a stop at Brød & Co. for their famous cinnamon rolls, or Selmir as they're known here. Despite the bakery's reputation, it was surprisingly quiet. Maybe because it was a Wednesday, maybe because we were early. In the small, cozy space, we ordered 4 warm, sticky rolls and took in the soft murmur of Iceland around us. While no music was playing, for some reason, Soli's song, Smashing Birds, became stuck inside my head. Sole is an Icelandic multi-instrumentalist whose ethereal indie pop blends delicate vocals with guitar and piano-driven compositions. Her songs, often sung in English, are known for their dreamlike, dark surrealism. All in all, we were in the city for about an hour. This really wasn't a trip for deep cultural immersion. It was more a trip for moving, for using your feet and exploring nature. After breakfast, we left the city and headed north along the coast. We pulled over at Mount Esja, a favorite hiking spot for Reykjavik locals. The trail started gently enough, but within about 20 minutes, our hearts were pumping, but we had made good progress. The sky hung low and gray, and though we were prepared for rain, we weren't quite ready to get soaked on our first hike. So when the drizzle started turning into rain, we turned back, saving our rain gear for another day. Throughout the hike, though, I heard hints of the song Throne by the Icelandic band Kiesmos replaying inside my head. Before settling into our Airbnb, we stopped at a restaurant where I thought I might be able to use some Icelandic. But it eluded me when the one behind the counter greeted us with a
"Good evening."
When the radio came back from commercial break, we were treated to Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It seems that you can leave America, but America won't leave you. The next morning was our first real day of exploration. We circled the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, and everything we saw felt untouched and unfamiliar. Our first stop was Kirkjufell, a famous mountain that looks like it was designed by Tolkien. Sharp lines slope perfectly, otherworldly. Some say it's the most photographed mountain in all of Iceland. You've probably seen it if you watch Game of Thrones, even if you didn't know its name. From there, we visited lava fields, basalt cliffs, sea stacks, and the beautiful Björknafoss, an 80-meter or 262-foot tall waterfall, and finished the day off with a stretch of coastline where seals rest on the rocks. It was all alien, all beautiful, and strangely quiet. Leaving Snæfellsnes, we had a light day as we began our journey to the south coast through Þingvellir National Park. On our way, we stopped at Vigdalmýrs, a tour of a nearly 1-mile-long lava tube where during Iceland's medieval period, criminals who were often outlawed from society once lived. At the place where human evidence was found, the cave would have been in total darkness. As we drove south and stopped at the wonderful Barnafoss, the waterfall seemed to emanate from the earth, cascading in hundreds of falls down the rocky face into an otherworldly blue water. This unexpected stop was one of the highlights of our trip. Continuing on, we veered off the ring road, which circles the Ohio-sized country, onto the more rustic Route 57. This road was a mix of asphalt and about 30 kilometers of gravel. This area is so remote and so different from anywhere I've been. It switched between a vast green valley and an almost Martian-like landscape, with periodic views of Langjökull, the second largest glacier in all of Iceland. After a day of mostly travel, we spent the following day hiking through Þingvellir National Park, tracing trails along the rift where the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates drift apart. We passed the magnificent Öxarárfoss, watching the water tumble over the black and rough rock. Even with a steady flow of tourists, we found a quiet spot to sit and enjoy our lunch. It felt still and settled, but it was just the prelude, because that afternoon we did something surreal. We snorkeled in the Silfra fissure, a crack in the earth filled with glacial water that's been filtered through lava for over a century. It's some of the cleanest water on the planet that you can see over 100 meters in front of you. Dipping into the cold water didn't feel like swimming. It felt like floating between worlds. And as strange as it sounds, the whole experience brought one song to mind, JFDR by Sigur Rós. It's not upbeat, it's not dramatic. It just hovers, like breath suspended in air. There's a soft, slow building sonar ping at the beginning, a kind of deep space lullaby that echoes out over the silence. That sound, that's exactly what it felt like in the fissure. Suspended between tectonic plates, drifting in perfect stillness, with this invisible pulse all around you, like the earth dreaming with one eye open. Sigur Rós formed in Reykjavik in the mid-1990s and became known for creating long, emotional soundscapes that feel more like weather than songs. They use bowed guitar, ambient drones, and Jósannes falsetto vocals, sometimes in Icelandic, sometimes in a made-up language called Hopelandic. The song, Svenji English, comes from the breakthrough 1999 album Ágætis Björn, which helped put Icelandic music on the international map. It was also featured heavily in the film Vanilla Sky, in a dreamlike scene where time bends and reality unveils. Once you've heard it there, it kind of lives in your subconscious forever. The next morning, after our Silfra adventure, we headed south towards Skogafoss. You don't really ease into Skogafoss. It reveals itself all at once. A sheer wall of water, tall as a building, roaring like an ancient god throwing a tantrum. By the time you walk up to the base, you're already wet, whether it's from the mist or your own disbelief. Many people stop there, but we didn't. We climbed the stairs precariously attached to the hillside, step after step, until we reached the top, and then we kept going. The trail beyond is called Waterfall Way, and it's exactly what it sounds like. A path that follows the river upstream through an almost cartoonish abundance of waterfalls. Dozens of them, maybe more. You actually lose count. Some roar from great heights, Others tumble through mossy canyons or sneak out from under rock shelves. At a certain point, you stop reacting. You just accept that Earth is here showing off. Along the trail, we passed sheep, shaggy, slow, and utterly unimpressed. They stood inches from the edge of steep drop-offs like it was nothing, like they'd seen this all before and found it barely worth blinking at. There were plenty of other hikers too, tourists like us, trailing behind or pushing ahead. But one figure caught my attention, a young woman off to the side of the trail, phone to her ear, taking what appeared to be a work call. It was jarring against the ancient roar of water. She'd found the most spectacular office in the world, but was still trapped in the same small cage of obligations. Watching her, I couldn't help but think of Jofríður Alkadóttir, better known as JFDR, in her song, My Work.
I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light.
Her voice floats over sparse, haunting arrangements that seem to breathe with the landscape. There's something about her sound, electronic textures woven with organic warmth, that captures the tension between modernity and timelessness. Listening to her feels like standing at the edge of a glacier, small and odd, while something ancient whispers secrets you're not quite ready to understand. The woman on the phone eventually hung up, pocketed her device, and stood there for a moment, really looking at the waterfalls for the first time. Maybe she heard it too, that quiet behind the thunder. But somehow, the landscape swallowed us all. The waterfalls were too loud, too theatrical, too overwhelming to let anyone feel like the main character. It was a hike full of thunder and quiet at the same time, and it felt almost undeserved. For the next 2 days, we were heading to Þórsmörk, or Thor's Valley, a remote valley off the main ring road. To prepare, we stopped at a grocery store to buy some food for the trip. While in the Groningen, examining packages of skinka, or deli ham, out of the blue, came the theme song from the NeverEnding Story. It's amazing how much...
With the big flying...
Yeah.
What was that animal even?
Some sort of dragonish
It
thing.
was like a furry dragon.
Yes.
Yes.
And I've got to imagine that only was even in their zeitgeist because of Stranger Things.
I mean, you have to sing the theme song.
Right. Even though I challenge Stranger Things on the use of that song.
How so?
Because even though it was appropriate for the time, the movie came out during that time period, was that song so beloved in the moment?
I don't think it was. I think it's a cult classic, and you found it later.
Yes.
100%.
Those kids would not have been singing that song.
NeverEnding Story. Like, there's no way.
Yes, people my age would appreciate that
It's
song.
dorky as hell, and I agree with you
Yes.
entirely.
Yes.
You Gen Xers
That's correct.
are very particular about your designations, and that's one you can wear proudly.
To get to Þórsmörk, you have to travel via one of Iceland's most notorious F-roads. F-roads in Iceland are only accessible to F-road certified vehicles. They must be four-wheel drive, and many of them feature snorkels to prevent flooding when crossing rivers. The F-249 road is legendary and requires a serious vehicle. The road passes through a valley shaped by glacial runoff, and while a gravel path is defined, the road changes daily. We caught an adventure bus, one of those absurdly tall, big-wheeled monsters built to crush rivers and ignore roads. The drive into Þórsmörk involved 4 distinct river crossings. The landscape shifted with every mile. Moss, ash, glacial runoff. Nothing is static. To prove the point, the same road back required 8 river crossings. We arrived at volcano huts, dropped off our bags, and headed straight into one of the most memorable hikes of the trip, a 14-mile loop. And early on, we made the decision to attempt to summit Rjúpnafell, a jagged, exposed peak that cuts into the sky like a blade. It's not tall by alpine standards, but it doesn't care. You can see the trail cutting through the moss-covered mountain in the distance. At first blush, it doesn't look too formidable, but as you get closer, you start to see exactly how steep this mountain is. The trail winds up a very steep open face. No trees, no shelter, just loose, black volcanic stone underfoot. Crushed lava anywhere from pea-sized to golf balls rolling under your boots. Every step feels negotiable. The switchbacks are narrow, the drop-offs are real, and the further you go, the more the wind starts to ask questions. We made it most of the way up, but near the final scramble, the wind gusts got to be pretty serious. We stopped to catch our breath and take in the immense glacial valley. At that moment, as the view was sinking in, another song crept into my subconscious. Standing there, with the wind carving through the silence, Jóhann Jóhannsson's Flight from the City began playing in my mind. That slow, repetitive build, like something momentous approaching from a great distance. Jóhannsson was Icelandic's master of cinematic minimalism, a composer who understood the most powerful moments often come from restraint. His music doesn't rush toward emotion, it lets it arrive on its own terms. There's something about his work that feels carved from the same stone as the landscape itself, patient, vast, and quietly devastating. He had a way of making orchestral music feel both ancient and impossibly modern, like he was translating the language of glaciers and volcanic fields into something human hearts could understand. After a few minutes, the rain started to pick up. We thought about the scramble up and the eventual down climb. With wind gusts forecast up to 30 miles an hour and rain starting to move sideways, we agreed that we'd seen enough and that the mountain could keep the rest. For the final stretch of the trip, we made our way out east toward Vatnajökull, the largest glacier in Europe. The statistics are almost meaningless, roughly the size of Connecticut, covering more than 8% of Iceland. Once you get close, you realize it's not just geography, it's a presence, something that reshapes everything about it. We spent a morning kayaking on Jökulsárlón, the glacier lagoon at the edge of Vatnajökull. It's a popular spot. A lot of tourists come here to see the icebergs drifting across the water, and honestly, it's worth the hype. However, we got lucky. Not only was it a sunny day, but our guide did a fantastic job of threading us through the ice, quietly steering us away from the busier parts of the lagoon, finding passages where it felt like we had the place to ourselves. Seals looked lazily at us from their floating iceberg thrones. Occasionally, an iceberg returned to expose its undercarriage to the air, as if they have a mind of their own. In my head, I started to hear Björk's Hyperballad, not because of the message of the lyrics, but because of the feel of it, the way it pulses, steadily, but always with something strange underneath, something shifting and something cold. It matched the lagoon perfectly, still on the surface, but never actually still. It's hard to talk about Icelandic music without talking about Björk. She's been one of the country's most visible and creatively fearless artists for decades. A singer, composer, producer, and actress. Whatever the project is, it's hers from the inside out. Her music's hard to pin down. It's not quite pop, not quite electronic, not classical, but it borrows from all of that. It's full of strange textures, glitchy rhythms, and vocals that can be soft, raw, or absolutely unhinged, sometimes in the same song. She's always felt like someone who isn't trying to represent Iceland, but can't help but be Icelandic. Weird, beautiful, stark, and totally on its own wavelength. And when you're drifting through the glacial lagoon between chunks of ancient ice, you don't need a catchy chorus. You need Hyperballad pulsing in your head, keeping time with the landscape. It's that song that stayed in my head as we later hiked on the glacier itself in Skaftafell, where the ice is blackened with ash in places and cracked with deep blue crevasses, which represent freshly revealed ice that's been hidden from the air for millennia. Although it was sunny, the wind still howled across the surface. Our guide was from Poland and was savvy to the ways of the glacier. She was diligent about our safety, but gave us a lot of freedom on the ice. We hardly noticed the other tours on the glacier until the end.
It really wasn't until near the end of the trip that I actually got to hear my first Icelandic music artist in the wild. The bonkers track Flugum Hæra by the female band Gurliner, a punkish band from the mid-1980s that was playing on our car radio. The song itself isn't anything that spectacular, but what stands out about it is the cackling witch sounds they make at the beginning. Compared to the other music that's been going on in my head, this is the strangest stuff. After the cackling witches subsided, Shakira's Hips Don't Lie came on next. We did a lot more on this trip, but it's time to wrap it up now, otherwise this will be a never-ending story. Up to this point, we primarily heard American pop music, whether it was Bob Marley and Keflavik, the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Borganes, Dua Lipa and Selfoss, John Mayer and Þórsmörk, Harry Styles and Kirkjubergkloster, and Beyoncé and Vic, where we paid $125 for 4 bowls of soup. Did I mention that Iceland is expensive? And while the physical soundtrack was very American, it didn't matter. I had my own Icelandic soundtrack playing the entire time. Sigur Rós, Olafur Arnalds, JFDR, Soli, Björk. They were in my head while I stood on ice that predates human history, or floated between 2 continents, or even watched the sky that refused to darken at midnight. Iceland is primitive and beautiful in the best possible ways. Its people, the ones I did meet, were bright, kind, and welcoming, and somehow never seemed surprised by how strange and amazing everything is around them. It's the kind of place that doesn't demand your attention because it knows it already has it. I hope you enjoyed this very different episode of Backwards Beats Podcast. I'm going to be including a link to a playlist of all of the Icelandic artists mentioned in this episode, and maybe a few others. Next week, we're coming back to the 500 greatest albums of all time as decided by Rolling Stone magazine. We're going to cover The Weight of These Wings by Miranda Lambert.
Backwards Beats Podcast is a Tunawood production recorded live at Thawshack Studios in Halethorpe, Maryland.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us at Backwards Beats Podcast on most platforms.
Share the love, and we'll see you next week for another deep dive into the next album on Rolling Stone magazine's Top 500 list. Until then, salt your melons.